future's here and now. Here comes the countdown. Sounding off this physical rising revolution. It's our time to change it all. Rising revolution. Unite and fight to make a better life. Everybody, one for all. Sound off. This is the call.
Women shouldn't have the right to choose to have an abortion. Okay, now that I've got your attention, let's take a step back, cool yourself down, and pour yourself a cup of tea, take a shot of whiskey, light a smoke, or whatever you need to do to calm yourself down. That way, you can listen to what and consider the following words with a completely open and objective mind. I've listened to a lot of stories throughout my life about women and how they have fought long and hard for the right to do with as they wish with their bodies. And I applaud them for this and salute their right to do so. But as a man who, as far as I'm aware, is unable to father children, but love children nonetheless, I see them as our future. I can't help but look at the world and how things are going and be forced to admit things do need to change. Back in my early 20s, I worked the graveyard shift at a shop, and one of the things we were allowed to do was watch movies to keep ourselves occupied between customers. And this is where I first seen the movie The Score. There was a scene in the beginning where Robert De Niro and Angela Bassett were having a meal and talking about moving in together. And Angela's character said something that struck me as so profound that it still resonates with me today. And she said, "A deal is only good if it leaves both parties feeling as if they gave up something." Now, you're probably asking, what does that matter, and why are you saying that women shouldn't have the right to choose to have an abortion? And to that I'm going to answer, I'm not. A woman should have the right to abort her child if she chooses, but only if the father does not want anything to do with it. For decades as it stands, the rights of a loving father and his family have been outright ignored. Thus, I believe that new legislation should be put into place to protect the rights of the father. I've broken up my points into points and counterpoints to help explain my position. Basically, it'd be like a question and then an answer. I hope you can follow. First, it's her body and no one can tell her what she can or can't do with it. This is true. A woman has the right to do with her body as she sees fit. But when that child is conceived, it's no longer just her body. It's now the residence of a new life being formed. The father who has taken equal part in the creation of that life, also known as the man she fucked to get pregnant by accident or design, it doesn't matter, he has just as much right to see his legacy survive regardless if she wishes to see it die. Thus, the right to end a life inside her is no longer her choice alone. But that's putting a man's rights over a woman's, and that's not fair. That's tantamount to slavery. Yes, it is, and no, it's not. It's a balancing of the scales, so to speak, because when a woman chooses to keep the child, she puts the father into a position of forced responsibility, regardless of his want to have anything to do with the child or not. She has the legal right to place the father into a state of financial bondage to provide for said child until they turn the age of 18. But what if the father wants to keep the child but the mother doesn't? Well, then the mother is forced to carry said child to term. When such a choice is made, custody of said child will be worked out through a mutual legal counsel regarding the full or partial custody and visitation rights and so on and so forth. Afterwards, the father would then be held accountable for the care and the welfare of the mother during the pregnancy within reason. The father would then be obligated to ensure the basic needs are met to ensure the survival of the mother and the child. And once the child is born, the obligation to the mother will then cease, and the child will thus be placed into the care of the father as stipulated earlier. Thus, the child now in the father's custody, the mother is then required to pay the father child support to ensure the child's well-being until the age of 18. But what if the mother wants the child and the father doesn't? then the solution is the same as it currently is. The father is legally obligated to provide financially for the mother and the child until the child is born. Then he is to pay child support to ensure the child's well-being until the age of 18. Nothing really changes from the current norm, save the obligation to take care of the mother during the pregnancy. But what if the child's a product of rape? Now, this is a tricky bit because depending on where you live and the definition of rape as seen through the eyes of the courts. For simplicity's sake, we shall use the definition of rape using the US's FBI definition. Penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim. This definition allows us to include recent changes to various laws, including made to penetrate and forceful envelopment, to be counted as rape, since it has been proven that women can and do rape men, allowing them to finally be acknowledged as victims in today's society. Thus, if the baby is proven by a court of law to be the result of rape, the victim, be they male or female, has the right to decide 100% as to the child's fate. The rapist is then arrested and charged and justice is served. But if it's a false rape accusation, the accuser is then arrested and charged with defamation of character, fraud over $5,000, emotional trauma, loss of monetary gains due to accusation, and the defendant then has the right to decide the fate of said child. Thus, justice is served once again. But this also has a bit of a time crunch element. Should the trial take too long, the child might be born in the time it takes for a verdict to be rendered. Thus, it becomes more of a custody issue than an abortion issue. What if both want the baby to live, but neither wish to claim custody? Well, then it's obvious. You put the child up for adoption. There are countless couples out there who can't have children who would raise a child with all the love and care would ever need. Why deprive them of the bliss of child rearing? So does this mean if both parents don't want the child, then the abortion can go through? Of course. Both sign the paperwork and walk away to deal with their conscience as they see fit, or the lack thereof. What if the mother doesn't know who the father is, or gets pregnant over and over and over and over without knowing who the father is? In a case like this, the child would be brought to term and placed into adoption should she decide not to keep it. Should the mother do this too often, some set them out, I'd go with the usual 3-strike rule, then a court-mandated tubal ligation shall be performed to prevent future occurrences from happening, with all the costs being levied upon the woman in question. Let's face it, there are more options out there for a woman to keep from getting pregnant than there are for a man. And if she can't be bothered to do it, then more permanent solution is then enforced. But what if she actually wants kids afterwards? Then at that point she has to petition the courts to have the procedure reversed and then pay for it. After all, she's the one who screwed up in the first place. This is just more of an incentive to have them make the right choices and own up to their responsibilities in the first place. But what about the man? What if he goes around impregnating women without taking responsibility? Then he gets charged with willful neglect and forced to have a court-mandated vasectomy. And the same laws apply to him as they would for the woman's situation. Plus, he has all that child support to pony up for later on. What if the mother knows who the father is but doesn't tell him the child is his? Then the mother loses the right to seek child support from him permanently. But should the father find out about the child's existence later on, he would then have the legal right to sue for custody of said child after a positive paternity test is taken, under the grounds of fraud and kidnapping. Because, let's face it, if she never knew in the first place, how was he supposed to take responsibility if he wanted to? That's also including should he wish to pursue the matter. Now, I'm no legal eagle or anything. I'm a simple man, and this is something I came up using common sense and my vague understanding of the laws. If you have any questions or comments, I invite you to please post them. All I ask is that you remain civil and treat me and others who may respond with the same level of respect that you would expect. If I can, I'll answer them. So please feel free to click like or subscribe. Above all else, feel free to share this video with those around you. After all, unless we start to discuss issues rationally, they will never truly be solved. Thank you for your time. I am, as always, the devil in the details. Good night.